All right, let's get started. Thank you all for coming. My name is Billy Thompson. I'm a Solutions Engineering Manager for the Cloud Compute sector of the Akamai Connected Cloud. And I want to thank you all for all the amazing work you're doing in the cloud. Really, I'm constantly impressed by your products, your innovation, and your achievements that we never thought were possible, but you're doing it. I want you to continue to flourish in that. You all hold great power in this space. You really do. And I want that power to stay in your hands. I want your innovation to continue pushing us forward. And of all the things that can get in your way, your cloud provider shouldn't be one of them. And that is why I want to talk to you about the power of portability. Let's start with some key terminology. Cloud native. Some of you have been beat over the head with this 1,000 times by now, but some of you are still getting acquainted. It boils down to an approach or technique for rapid development and deployment that leverages technologies that take advantage of the elasticity and agility and scale and flexibility of on-demand resources in public, private, and hybrid cloud environments. That's my narrowed down version. The Cloud Native Computing Foundation governs the official longer definition. And they do an excellent job at nourishing an ecosystem of vendor-neutral, open-source projects that enable cloud-native development. They do an outstanding job at promoting portability. But their official definition of cloud-native lacks enforcement of portability. You can develop an application with a cloud-native design pattern, containers, service meshes, APIs, and so on, but that is built in a way that it can only run on a particular platform. And that's what we refer to as platform native. For example, you can be leveraging a provider's managed Kubernetes service. The service itself may be CNCF compliant because it meets their standards of portability. The service itself is interoperable, but the application you deploy on that service may be leveraging other tools and managed services that only exist on that particular platform. That workload is not portable. It is vendor locked. It is stuck there. And the longer it is stuck there, the longer and more difficult it can be to untangle from that. Compare this to Cloud Agnostic, where we can take the exact same example, only instead of wrapping around those platform native tools, we'll leverage open source technologies that provide the same or similar functionality. Open source tooling that can run anywhere. And then from a platform perspective, you are just leveraging the core cloud infrastructure primitives. Compute, storage, networking. And in today's world, we can even push that as far as to include things such as load balancers or Kubernetes engines. The things that you will find on all of the cloud infrastructure providers. That workload is portable. So by the end of this talk, I want you to consider how you can be cloud native in a way that is cloud agnostic. And then we have this thing called cloud waste. Some recent studies over the past year or two suggest that 90% of business and IT leaders who rely on cloud computing find that billing is the most complex and confusing part of their cloud experience. And nearly half of them struggle to get their cloud spend under control. And roughly 1/3 of that cloud spend is cloud waste. What I happen to notice about these studies and analysis is how relative they are to the hyperscalers, the big three that most are using. Some of whom can, have, and probably will again stand before you on stages like this, at conferences like this, and they'll tell you that the solution to this problem is to use more of their stuff. Use their tools to help you better use their tools. It's an interesting narrative, I think. They offer a plethora of these platform-native tools that are sold to you as solutions to abstract away the complexity and operational overhead that you would otherwise be burdened with having to run and manage this workload yourself on their platform. In the broadest definition, cloud waste simply refers to unnecessary spend on cloud services. But to understand your cloud spend, we need to factor in more than just the monetary amount we throw at these cloud services. You need to consider the energy and effort and headache spent constantly trying to get your cloud bill under control. You need to factor in the resources spent having to learn a specific platform and their specific tools that don't work anywhere else and implementing them efficiently. You need to factor in the resources spent making architectural, application, and in some cases, even business decisions around your ability and understanding to use these tools. And you need to factor in the resources spent on talent acquisition, having to hire very specific talent. For example, somebody who is AWS certified developer or practitioner. Somebody who is further along the learning curve, who can hopefully help you better use these tools that are there to make it easier for you by abstracting the complexity, but it wasn't so easy, so you had to hire somebody to use the tools to make it easy, and it feels like we're stuck in a loop. A loop that is underserving and ever spending. A real loop that is stunting to the growth and potential of organizations in this space. And I'll give you an example. Multi-cloud. Every day I hear this word, because every day there are more organizations looking to adopt a strong, durable, multi-cloud strategy. And not because they believe in some ideology, because they can see how it will strengthen their position in the space. They can see some hurdles in front of them and how it will help them overcome those hurdles and get to the finish line first. They can see it as a tactical approach to succeed in their mission. So what's stopping them? When I talk to clients who have all their eggs in the basket of one hyperscaler, the most common answer I hear is, we think that'll be too complex for us. And as I go on to explain, what I gather is their frame of reference for what it's like to deploy this workload in the cloud based on their experience of doing so with this particular cloud provider. Now, this is our opportunity to educate them on the art of the possible of what's out there, to think outside this loop, to find grass that is potentially greener and healthier. Maybe it tastes better and easier to eat and digest. But without that exposure, if my frame of reference is just my experience and pain of one cloud provider, I would feel the same way they do. I would be afraid to take that step forward, even if I know it's good for me, because I couldn't imagine multiplying the struggles of one cloud provider by adding another one. A loop that is stunting to the growth and potential of organizations in this space. Now compare this with another example. I had a client. They did some shopping around and they arrived at a strategy. Where they landed was, okay, we like your competitive pricing, we like your simplicity, and we like your customer support. So we have this core workload that we're going to put on your platform. However, we have this other workload that is more bandwidth heavy that we're going to put on this other European-based provider because we did the math and found out that for the size of the workload, we actually get a better bundle for bandwidth there. Their customer service isn't so great. Their platform isn't the easiest to use. There are some things we don't like about them, but we can get by without those. We don't need that. For this workload, we can just take advantage of the bandwidth bundle. And should that ever change, we can move that to you as well, or to somewhere we see a better fit. Solid. Here's an organization that has a durable multi-cloud strategy right out the gate. And not because they're chasing the buzzword, but because it made sense. It made sense for them. They want to squeeze all the juice they can from the fruit of the trees of these two cloud providers, as they should. They have the ability to move around, to expand and contract, go this way or that way. Should their mission change, or their product goes stale, or unpopular, or less relevant to the industry, and they need to pivot their business to something else, they have the means to pivot their architecture to support that. By architecting around open source and just core cloud infrastructure primitives, they have relieved themselves of the complexity and platform dependence that would otherwise impede the strategy. They can evolve at the speed of the industry, and they can do so with minimal cloud waste. A portable strategy like this allows us to fine-tune the metrics that matter by striking a balance between three critical dials: cost, performance, and geography. So you want to reduce cost. You can identify the more data-intensive workloads that will run just fine on a lower cost provider. And then say you have this performance-thirsty workload. You put on this provider because they maybe have a greater abundance of beefier GPU instances. And then say you have this workload over here. And it serves an audience in a very particular region, and it requires low latency and data sovereignty. So you can pick a provider that has more coverage and better serves that area. A portable design like this allows us to commoditize cloud providers, in contrast to vendor lock-in, which limits your options and exposes you to a central point of failure for service outages and a vendor's pricing whims, or things like changing privacy policies that no longer sit right with you or your end users, or services that EOL or upgrade in a way that it's no longer compatible with how you're using it. These are things that can really leave you in a bit of a scramble if you have nowhere else you can go. But this scramble can be avoided and replaced. Durability. By designing applications that run on commodity infrastructure and multiple cloud providers. Whether that's done in a way where you concurrently run it on multiple providers, or in a way that you can quickly swap out or fail over onto another provider. And consider this. You might diversify your stock portfolios. Why? To mitigate the risk and impact if one sinks. Therefore, I think you should consider diversifying your cloud portfolio for the same reason. In doing so, you achieve a greater degree of availability and a greater defensive strategy for business continuity and disaster recovery. And despite a very popular narrative that doing this inherently means you're signing up for more work or something more difficult or complex, no, it isn't. It doesn't have to be more difficult or complex. You can just look at it as doing something differently, taking a different approach to deployment. And different does not inherently mean difficult. You have industry standard, de facto, open source automation tooling at your fingertips. You have the ability to version control your cloud resources. Set up, and this functions like an abstraction to the underlying components to do all the management heavy lifting for you so that you can focus on what matters most. Your applications, your business, and your end users. And in the vendor locking scenarios, with all this cloud waste, if 1/3 of an organization's cloud spend is cloud waste, then I'm going to make the argument that what they're doing is more difficult, more confusing, more complex, and a bigger drain on resources than doing things this way, the portable way. To conclude, the point at which you are spending cycles building for a platform versus building with a platform is the point at which your mobility is being restricted by that platform. To future-proof your success in this rapidly evolving, hyper-competitive space, you need to stay flexible. You need to be agile. And you need the ability to get the most out of the cloud resources that are available to you. If your cloud provider is making that difficult, then they are underserving you. As cloud providers, we should be supporting you and empowering you by making this as simple and accessible as possible. And the best way for you to hold us accountable to that, and I'm saying this as a cloud provider, the best way for you to hold us accountable to that, portability. Thank you all for sticking with me. I am humble, I am approachable. If you see me milling about the show, which means just that booth over there, please come by and say hello. I am your biggest fan, and I'm rooting for your success in this space. I think we have a couple minutes left if anyone has questions.